Welcome back to Prolight and Sound BIZLounge 2021. It's 1 o'clock and I'd like to welcome you to European legislation, the event industry and the future of lighting. Now, coming from the topic of sustainability in our previous discussion, our next topic follows a pretty similar approach. Now, the implementation of the last Ecodesign Directive proved to be a wake-up call for the event and live performance industry. The European Union's legislation regarding energy consumption and reduction of hazardous materials has a direct effect on which lamps and therefore luminaires are to be used and are allowed to be used. And what are the current and future issues that international associations are currently working on, and what are we trying to achieve? Christian Allabauer, a key member of the European Ecodesign Coalition Team, will hold a presentation of the current status, and then of course we will have a Q&A session afterwards as well. And I'd like to welcome the member of the board at the OETHG, the Austrian Theatre Engineering Association, Christian Allabauer, and member of the board of the DTHG, the German Technical Theatre Society, Hans-Joachim. Great to have you here, gentlemen. And once again, before we start the info on the Q&A. So after the presentation and a little discussion, we give you the opportunity to ask questions in the window right below the video. So if you have any questions, type them in and we'll get them and ask them to our panelists, to our speakers. But as of now, Christian, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you. And a warm welcome from Austria. I'm glad to share with you the learnings of 3 years working on the Ecodesign regulation. By the end of today, you will know what it's all about and have an overview on this course by end of September this year. And you will see what has been achieved. The second part will cover upcoming legislation projects. And to get started, we will start with a small quiz. So could we please have the PowerPoint presentation on screen? Okay, here we go. So we are covering this legislation topic today. And the first question of the quiz is, please tell me the number of light sources that you see according to the Ecodesign regulations. So I prepared 3 different objects, 3 different light sources. Please let me know which one is a light source according to the Ecodesign Directive. Can we return to the picture? I just want to show the first object. So please, can you reduce the size of the PowerPoint slide and show the camera back? Okay, here we go. That's the first object, the first light source. So is this light source a light source according to the Ecodesign Directive? That's the second one, a small LED, 3 mm size. And the third one, I've prepared it in paper. So that's a 1K short arc discharge lamp. Is this a light source according to the Ecodesign Directive? So what's your guess? Are there 3 light sources? Are there 2? Or is there even 1? Well, the truth is none of them is a light source according to the Ecodesign Directive. The lighter is not an electrical light source, so it's not considered to be a light source according to this directive. The small LED is simply too small, and small signaling elements are not considered to be light sources. And the 1K discharge lamp is too bright to be a light source. So the first thing we had to learn was there is a special topology on this legislation. Going back to the second question. So I took light sources here, and I want to ask you, what's the difference between those 2 light sources? Well, both of them are tungsten, both of them emit light from electric power, but what's the difference? So the difference can be seen on this side, and I'll come to this later on. Third question, it's all about LEDs. So are you on the safe side if you use LED spotlights for theatrical, for entertainment use? That's one thing that we will address today. Fourth question, is the relationship between Count Dracula and LED fixtures? And the last question, okay, what is a lighting orchestra? It's an analogy that I want to present at the very end. So let's go straight into the presentation. Our first part will talk about eco-design, as it is the most relevant for entertainment lighting sources. And I've written down here the two numbers where this regulation can be found. By the way, in any languages that are used in the European Union, so you can find a Polish, a Czech, an Austrian version, all of them will be presented there. And I've taken a second number here because there was an amendment, so an improvement to make the whole thing work or to correct errors. Okay, what's eco-design all about? Well, the basic goal is to reduce the energy consumption all over Europe. And that's something that really succeeded. So it's not the first time that we're talking on eco-design. The basic directive was already done in 2005. But yeah, now it's very much focused for us on our light sources. And that's what we're going to look at next. There are some other issues that are covered, like simplifications, so reducing the number of documents, minimum quality requirements, and of course, avoiding cross-use. So cross-use defines the illegal use of light sources. For example, this standard light bulbs should not be placed in the markets any longer. But as they have this little sign on the bottom, okay, just need to jump. As they have this little sign on the bottom that they are shock resistant, it's all good. It seems to be all good. So at the very moment, there is abuse of the exemptions. So people say, okay, but it's used for theater, therefore it's good. And that's not true. It should be only used in theater if it's made for theater, and we can't use an exemption for someone else. And that was one big consideration of the European Union to avoid this cross-use. And well, at which point does this start? So it approaches to regulate light sources. So the intention is not to regulate the whole fixtures, but it can turn out to do that. But basically, it's about the light source. And what is a light source? We have seen what's not a light source, but a light source is an electrical source, so something that emits light from electrical power. And typically, everything that's in our spotlights and creates light is a light source. And there are also considerations on control gear. So control gear is everything that kind of adopts the mains power so it can be used by a light source. And as I said, efficiency should increase and standby power should decrease. So you all are aware of these television sets that have a standby mode that takes no more than 0.5 watts. Well, and there is a certain point where this needs to be applied. So on the right-hand side, you can see stock usage. Everything you have in your house, everything a dealer has in his stock is all right forever. So if you already bought your lamps, you are good. But if you're a manufacturer within the European Union, or if you're importing those stuff into the European Union, then you should take a really close look to this legislation. And by the way, if you're having things on stock, you still might need to buy new lamps, new spotlights for upcoming projects to replace broken units or simply to save energy. Okay, what was the starting point? So in early 2018, I received an emergency call and it said, well, tungsten lamps in theater are about to be banned. And I was not sure if this was one of the hundreds emergent calls that arrive by email every day or every week. So I gave this question to the commission officer and she answered, well, providing there are suitable replacements on the market, the entertainment section could be removed. And actually, it was already removed in the very first draft that was presented by the Commission to the public. So it was kind of 5 minutes to 12 because the assumption that suitable replacements are available is not at all true. Let's take a look. So applying this initial draft would have removed 95% of the existing entertainment tungsten lamps, but also LED spotlights. And well, there are good reasons why LED spotlights are affected as well. Typically, LED is the answer. So the way the regulation thinks is, okay, you have here this beautiful light bulb that is not very energy efficient. So you screw it out, take an LED bulb, and all's good. You've increased your efficiency dramatically by doing this simple step. So you are green now. Okay, but that's the whole truth, probably for most of the application. So for public general purpose lighting, this is true, but it's not true for entertainment lighting, as there are special attributes that needs to be fulfilled. On the top, you can see there is 2 spectral distribution charts. So tungsten typically is covering the whole spectrum, and LED is not only not covering the whole spectrum, but it's having ups and downs. So if you think on an audio repeater, up and downs might not give the same effect on different colors, skin tone, decorations, as if you have an even continuous distribution. Well, of course, there are differences in LEDs, depending on the CRI, depending on the quality, but it's not exactly the same. And yeah, that's one very important topic. The other thing is we don't switch on our lights all day long. So if you have hallway lighting, it's probably switched on for 10 hours a day. The very basic idea of lighting design is to highlight only the objects, the persons that are in focus for this very individual scene. So sometimes the spotlight is only used for 3 minutes for the whole performance and not for all day long. We also are very interested in smooth dimming. So I've prepared an example here. You can see here 2 different light sources. And if I dim them down very smoothly, you can see one is rather steppy and the other is rather smooth. Well, our industry solved the dimming issue very good. So we have solution to have smooth dimming with LED. We use 16-bit, whatever, but it takes some effort to do this. And it's a very important approach to make it cheaper for the customer at the end of the day. So we need to consider more in an entertainment spotlight than we need to consider in a publicly used light source. There is also an issue about color rendering, which you can see above in the spectral distribution diagrams. Lighting distribution is very important to us. So we have a lighting cone, and inside this cone it's bright, and outside the cone it should be dark. That's not so important for floodlights that just do a much more smooth lighting distribution and don't need defined cones. And by the end of the day, we are using very high intensity. So typically, public source is far below 100 watts, and our sources typically starts from 100 watt and go up to 1000 watt or more. Okay, but the draft showed that this physical knowledge was not considered in this first draft. So it was not a good idea to shout or to argue very hard with the Commission, but it was rather a good idea to reach out for them and to kind of provide the relevant information. An old Native American saying is, you have to take 100 steps in the moccasins of your partner to understand what he's doing. So nobody wanted to harm the entertainment, the theater sector. They rather wanted to save energy and the most energy savings possible all over Europe. So it was a good intention and a supportable intention. They did not focus on energy reduction on the entertainment sector, because then they would need to consider much more things than they could consider, and that would be suitable for public lighting. And the numbers are, according to our quality requirements, not achievable, not for tungsten lights and not even for most of the LED light sources. So by the end of the day, 3 years after this first draft, the final amendment of the regulation was presented last month, and it recognizes that there aren't suitable replacements for our sector, but we need to consider that there are no loopholes. So as I've shown you, the shock-resistant sticker on a lamp can say it's all good. That doesn't work any longer. So it's not sufficient to say, well, this is for theater, because everyone could abuse by just telling the public, well, my lamp is intended for theater. It also needs to be distinguishable. It needs to have a clear technical attribute that makes sure that it's for theater. And wow, that's what's finally came out, an overview. So as you can see in the very center, we can still use 80% of our tungsten sockets and 90% of our LED spotlights. Coming back to the second question, the quiz, the difference between those two sources is this is a source that has an E27 socket that's used almost everywhere. So it cannot be exclusively theater. This is a 9.5 millimeter socket that's used in entertainment business only. So this can be exempted. Okay, going back to the slides. On the right-hand side, you can see more than 500 lumen per square millimeter. So this addresses the discharge lamps. And also above there is more than 82,000 lumens. So this addresses very bright lamps. So more than 1000 watt discharge would fulfill both of these criteria. And it's outside of the green frame. So it means that it's simply not covered by the regulation because it's not a light source. And on the left-hand side, you can see LED dyes or less than 60 lumens. So everything that's very small is also not covered by the regulation. So signaling doesn't need to take care on efficiency. Well, I've done another version of the thing you've seen before. And this kind of shows which exemptions are there in the final regulation. So on the very headline, it says exemption information only. So you have to have in all your advertisement, in all your technical documentation, you have to mention this is for theoretically for scenic use only. So there's some applications like photography, film, television. We can take a look later on. Yeah, and it says 80% of tungsten sockets, those sockets that are clearly defined to be only for entertainment lighting. The next thing is on LEDs, color tunable. So if you have, for example, an LED wash that or something with additive color mixing that has at least a red, a green, and a blue LED that are highly saturated, then it's exempted. You can have, of course, many more, amber, lime, mint, indigo, whatever, but it needs to have white light, of course, and saturated red, blue, and green. There's also an exemption for very narrow spotlights, no matter whether they are LED or tungsten. If they're less than 10-degree angle, then they will be exempted. And very important, and that was kind of the last points we were working on, if it's CRI 19, so it's very good color rendering, and it's more than 100 watt and exclusively used for entertainment lighting, then it's exempted. Also, if it's adaptive CCT, so if it can do cold white, warm white, and has more than 100 watt, then it's exempted. And at least there is something on moving lights. So it does not say moving light in the regulation because that was not okay. It says if there is a gate, so if the emitting surface is bigger than the output surface at the end of the optical system, then it's all right if it's more than 180 watt. And you can see the red bar on the bottom. That's some things that could not be exempted because they are simply also used in household like MR16 or E27 sources. Well, Ecodesign 2019 and the amendment 2021, it's done. We spent many thousand hours of works, but by the end of the day, by contributing with association and people all over Europe, we made it to have something that works out and that provides us our essential tools also for the next couple of years. There were so many people, over 11 European countries that contributed. I just want to name those who spent the very most time in it. So that's Pearl, Plaza, VPLT, our today's host, SLF, the Swedish lighting designers, DTHG, Hans-Joachim will be on this meeting to answer your questions, the ALD, the IALD, and STEP in Belgium. And yeah, so thank you very much for your work on this and everybody who contributed. And for all the details, please take a look in the regulations. They can't be addressed in every detail for now. Yeah, we just go into the next session and look at the future of lighting. So what is the upcoming legislation topics that we are addressing? 3 of them are important. The first is ROS, the reduction of hazardous substances. Maybe you all of you have noticed that lead for soldering disappeared. So a couple of years ago, new PCBs arrived, but there is one other important substance, and that's mercury. So if a substance is hazardous, is dangerous, then it must not be used at all, except there is an exemption that needs to be prolonged every 5 years. And such an exemption is there for mercury in discharge lamps. And well, the 5 years have passed by, so there needs to be a new submission that already has been done. And there are always consultants who should clarify what's really necessary and what can be substituted with new technologies. So they gave us questions and we answered to them. Yeah, you can see this chart on the bottom. And in this display, you can see the blue bars are the lumen counts of discharge fixtures. And the red bars next to it is that what's achievable by LED sources today. So the 3 bars are from 300 to 1000 watt LED, and you can see the discharge sources still can do much more. So that's the reason why we think they are still necessary, while we see that the numbers are going down. More and more LED moving lights, for example, pop up and they are used. So almost any new moving light is an LED moving light, but there are still applications that require discharge lamps. And so we are going to follow this process. It's another department of the European Commission, and they are going to do a stakeholder consultation next, and there will be a public review later this year. So it's one of the topics we are working on, and yeah, we'll keep you updated. The second and bigger thing is with Ecodesign, the main problem for us was that it only focuses on one number. That's not perfectly true, but the general thinking is it focuses on the lumen per watt count. So it's comparing the electrical energy with the brightness to the human eye. And it doesn't consider all these quality requirements that we have. There are some requirements that are very interesting for some manufacturers, but for the bright public of the entertainment lighting users, they are not that important. So it's only one number, lumen per watt count. And Sustainable Product Initiative is widening this view. It says we don't look only at the on power for the moment the unit is operated. It says, okay, we also look on manufacturing, maybe even before on the mining. We look on reuse, recycle, maybe depositing. So that's the thing that's done or called Sustainable Product Initiative. And it should widen the view and reduce not only the energy consumption, but the resource consumption for the whole life cycle. For the very moment, there are many beautiful headlines that we would all agree on. Actually, this Thursday, there's going to be the first web meeting where the Commission and the consultants are presenting what they actually intend to do. It could be that eco-design is simply extended to other products like textiles, electronics. And yes, if you have something to say on this, you can do so. You see a link on the very bottom. So the public review is open until June the 9th. Okay, Ecodesign. I said we successfully finished the current period, but there is also a 5-year cycle. So within the next 5 years, we have to argue again, are our existing sources replaceable by newer, better technology, more efficient technology, or is there still a need to have them? From our thinking in the very moment is we are getting better, we are definitely getting better, but we are not there yet. So yeah, we have to have this discussion again. We have to collect data, have to input our argumentation. By the way, if you're a scientist and working on the necessity of having full spectrum from 380 to 780 nanometer, please contact us, because we are looking for scientific works that help us in arguing our needs, because just say it's for art, it's not sufficient. We unfortunately discovered this over the last year. Just say it's good for art, it's not enough. We need to have clear numbers, charts, comparisons that say, okay, that's why it's necessary. And one footnote, we are now talking on legislation. So what's allowed to be placed in the market? That does not necessarily mean that it is available. So even so most tungsten sockets are available, they might phase out at the manufacturers. So that's something to consider, and always double check with your manufacturers or your dealers what's still available. But the big advantage, this time we are involved. So Pearl, which is the organization for the employers in live entertainment all over Europe, and you heard Anita in the last session, they are accepted member and can send technical experts to these meetings of the European Ecodesign Consultation Forum. So now we are involved, and now we can present our arguments and our reasons and necessities from the very beginning. Okay, we have now finished the topics that we have from the legal side. Last point is we take a look on what can we do right now, because the legal things only give a framework and kind of reduce the things, but we can fill out this frame with things we can do and contribute with. First thing is lighting design. So if we have stage lighting, we don't turn on our 500 spotlights at one for the whole time. It would be very boring lighting soup, we call it. So just use the spotlight you need. Well, that's lighting design all about. That's what lighting design is all about. Switch off unused equipment. 10 years back, we had one big switch, switched on the whole dimming system in the morning, switch it off at 11 o'clock in the night. Today, we have maybe 100 or more, or maybe less moving lights. So moving lights take standby power. Standby is one exemption that we achieved, because if you have LED lights, you need to have a small computer that calculates all the dimming curve, all the mixture of the different colors. So this small computer needs energy and consumes standby power. If it was considered as standby power, it would be too high. But we address this as an always available power. So we expect, unlike standby, that the unit, if it's set by the console to 100%, it should immediately go to 100%. We cannot wait for 5 seconds, for 1 minute until a moving light has initialized to have the light on stage. That's why we have an always available mode, but maybe we don't need the unit to be always available all day long, but only for the performance, for example. Okay, going back to the advantage or to the things we can do, also the manufacturers can think on how can we reduce power in always available mode. We maybe don't get 0.5 watt, but we may come down to half of it or whatever. Yeah, exchangeability and repairability. This is a big topic in eco design. So a light source is the smallest part that emits light and that can be taken apart. If you can't remove your light source from a spotlight, then the whole spotlight is considered to be the light source. Otherwise, if you have a typical tungsten projector, then only the lamp is considered to be the light source and the spotlight is the containing product. But only a little number of companies have replaceable sources. So maybe it's a good thing to think, can we have more replaceable light sources? Well, going to the next topic of reduction of hazardous substances, we always have to look, are there more sustainable alternatives to our light sources? Do we really need a discharge projector? Do we really need a tungsten spotlight? If we need it, it's good. We are allowed to use it. If we don't need it, maybe it's better to go to LED. And France, I heard from France that they introduced a collection system. So what happens if the discharge lamp is broken? Do you just deposit it, or can you recollect and by that way avoid that mercury gets into the environment? Yeah, and the last, on the Sustainable Product Initiative, always use the most efficient tool for your task. Be sure that you fulfill your task, but always use the most efficient tool. And double check before depositing. So if you use a spotlight only for a very short time, the tungsten spotlight might do for another couple of years, and you don't need to buy new equipment that has to be manufactured, that takes resources. So always do check out for the proper balance, and definitely watch out for technical progress. That's what trade shows, the virtual alternatives are here for, to see, okay, what's going on in the market? Can we do better than we did last year? Yeah, finally, I want to solve this thing about the lighting orchestra. So what's a lighting orchestra? What is an orchestra? A orchestra needs to have percussions as well as wind section and string. One of them is missing, then the orchestra sound is not good. So I've kind of added to each of this the adequate light sources. So percussion, the loud instruments, what do we need? We need this high output, low CRI, moving lights, spotlights with CRI 70 possibly, but maximum output for entertainment, for big concerts, far distances, we need the high output thing. We also do need the high saturation devices. So this intense blue, red that are made from additive LED fixtures. On the wind section, we need high CRI LEDs to have nice skin tones, beautiful decorations, and we need adaptive CCT. And for the very fine tones, we probably still need full spectrum tungsten HMI sources to have heavy accent or to do historic things from our repertory the way they were without relighting them. So, coming to the conclusions. Today, we may still use our essential tools, and that's quite a lot. Trust that was put into us, that we still got these exemptions back. Tomorrow, we have to watch out for it. Can we do better? Of course we can, I think.
We seem to be having some technical difficulties here. Christian, are you with us? He's reconnecting, I think. Or did he fall off the chair? Probably somebody else using the Wi-Fi at home. He will be probably back in just a few moments, and then we will continue with the questions from our Q&A. So if you have any questions regarding Christian's presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat window below the video screen, and we'll be answering those questions when he's back. Or, well, maybe have Hans-Joachim answer all the question. Now Christian is back. Hans-Joachim, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right, great. Great to have you here. He had so many light bulbs, and now all of them are off.
Yep. This could have happened if he didn't work with it.
Yes. But you know what? We go into our little, well, small advertising segment and hopefully be back with Christian after that one. Christian, you are back. What happened? Let us know. We're interested.
So sorry for this interruption. I prepared so many things, but I didn't plug my notebook, and it showed me battery low and was shutting down immediately. So yeah, sorry for that. But I think we finished the presentation, and yeah, thank you
With your
for
conclusion,
listening.
and then we'll be back.
Okay, here we go. So we watch out for innovations. There's always a point that we can do better tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. And in general, well, we have the legal framework for the very moment that allows us to use our tools. So we need to take care on sustainability. It's our responsibility. And of course, lighting design is the key. Don't switch on lighting fixtures that you don't need. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Christian, for this presentation. Really, really interesting topic and a really extensive topic as well. So, Hans-Joachim, how important are these lobbying efforts for artists, technicians and admins working in the industry?
Well, first of all, I think I want to mention that Christian made a very, very good and precise presentation of all the aspects concerning the lighting industry and the lighting in theater especially. And a few years ago, when that eco-design problem came up to the theater, and I'm working since more than 30 years in theaters and also in the lighting departments, I had the feeling that there's coming up a man-made hazard to our theaters, especially in Europe, in Germany and Austria. To my opinion, that would have been a really big hazard in that moment, that we wouldn't have people like Christian and people trying to step into that discussion, and they made a very, very good job in the end. Just to make a little bit clear for all of those who are not familiar with theater lighting, I want to have the statement that the theater lighting is, in my opinion, a very special way of working and, let's say, painting with lights. That's a very long tradition. Since decades we are working on that, and I think we have developed a very special skill working with mainly with tungsten, but also with HMIs and things like that. So if these were cut out from more or less one day to the other, we would have a big problem. I would like to compare that if you take Rembrandt, the painter, into our time and give him a computer and tell him to make his wonderful paintings with computers and print that out in normal standard printers. You can imagine what comes out, and for the most important thing is you can imagine what we could miss in our experience and in that sense of what we are used to see in our world. And that's kind of a part of the theater lighting. If you take that out, what we have done there, and use simply these other things like LEDs, for example, with their limited lighting expressions, you would miss a lot of things. So I think this is a very, very good situation that we have that open space for the next few years. and we are looking how we can manage that. And Christian made a few tasks, and in his last sheet he was talking about that. I just want to take the focus also on the part that we have to have a lot of investments in that area. We do have in most or in a lot of theaters, because they do not work with modern equipment and with the necessary network systems. We have to do there a lot of investments the next few years to be prepared for all that what comes up in that sense. And I think the second aspect is that we need to have a long period of changing the systems. If we are missing some lights, like the tungsten lights from one day to another, or at least from one season to another season, we need to do all the lighting of the systems of the productions we have. We have to renew these lightings. So that means typically we have for production like 2 to 3 lighting days to do the setups to develop the setups. That is pretty much the same time we need now to redo those production lightings, and that's a lot of time we need there to prepare that. And if you imagine that a big theater like State's Opera House is working with up to 60 productions in the repertoire system, that means you have like 120 days you only can do the lighting for that. So that means we have to be very, very careful about that. In the end, it's just the question what we will miss and what we are used to. And so this is the main part. We have to have a focus on that, not to miss too much of the skills we developed the last years with the tungsten and with the very fine art of lighting, and to be very careful and maybe to add all that together. So that means the mix Christian showed in one of those last charts seems to be one of the solutions to work along with that. And I think this is the only chance to get out of that hazard that seemed to come up, and maybe we find solutions for that in this way. Thank you for Christian's work anyway in that fantastic presentation.
Thank you very much, Hans-Joachim. And we have to look a bit on time. Have to watch the time here. We only have a couple of more minutes left, and I want to address some of the questions from the audience. And I would like to start with the first one. Do you see a general contradiction between light quality and energy efficiency? Christian, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's not a contradiction. It's kind of, so basically, we need to invest energy. We can invest energy to get the most light output, and we can invest energy to widen the spectrum. So for example, the most efficient light source I know is the low pressure sodium lamp that has this single yellow light with 200 lumens a watt. That cannot be achieved by anything else, but it has no color rendering. It's only yellow and black. So we invest light to widen the spectrum, to have CRI 80 or more, as it's required in the regulation for each and every light. If we want to go up to 100, we invest energy. So I would rather like to call it redefine the benefit of a light. The benefit is not only that it's making creating visibility, it's also creating quality. And by that way, it's somehow right that you are limiting the efficiency by having full spectrum or better spectral distribution. But it will go up also, efficiency will go up even if you have high quality. Maybe that's the answer.
I hope that answers the question. Next question, how do the theatre technology associations support the event technology industry in developing adequate replacements for high energy consuming lamps?
Christian?
Okay, I'll start with basically there are different associations around the OETHG and other theater associations typically have more members from the customer side, from the end users, from the theaters, from the event companies, and some manufacturing members. Well, we kind of address, can show up what's happening, but the development is something you really need to invest money in. We can show, okay, that could be the way, but we can definitely help to understand the regulation and the path that we need to go, but we can't support any technology improvements. We don't do research on that. So I think that's not our task, at least from the side of the theater technology associations. There are manufacturer associations that could do that. But a problem we always run in is we're a very small industry. And if we need 1,000 units, other industries like the car industries might buy 1 million units. So it's very hard that someone develops a light source especially for us. So we can support some in some items, but I think that's not our main task.
All right. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Very interesting presentation once again, and I think we can conclude on sustainability doesn't mean light has to be less of quality. So thank you very much for being here this afternoon, Christian and Hans-Joachim. And we will be back with our next topic, No Future, Academic Education in Uncertain Times, in just about 8 to 7 minutes at 2 o'clock.